Resourceful Designer, episode 191, Design Business Networking.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He gets woozy watching roller coasters on TV. Mark Descote.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. In this week's episode, I'm going to share networking advice to help grow your business, especially if you're an introvert. I'm also going to share this week's weekly tip all about file management. Now, what have I been up to? Well, this past week, I've been working on a couple of different websites. One of them is a small website. It should have written really fast, but I was running into a little bit of problem with some CSS issues, and I finally got to the bottom of it. So I'm almost done that website. I'll have it done early next week. And there's another website that's a fairly large project that I started this week that should take me several weeks to get completed. I'm also doing a few changes to my own podcast branding website. I'm just going through changing some of the wording, the copy on it. I wasn't 100% happy with the copy I had, so I'm slowly going through and making some changes there just to see if it spruces things up and maybe makes it more enticing for clients. So those are a couple of the projects I'm working on this week. I've also been doing some research into the various things that I'm added to my Black Friday list. My list is actually starting to get pretty long. I don't know if I'll be able to get everything, but I'm looking at a few different things. Like I'm definitely going to upgrade my iPhone. I'm hoping for a good deal on Black Friday. It's just trying to figure out exactly which one of the new iPhones I want, as well as I'm contemplating a new Apple Watch. And right now, the Series 3 and Series 5 are what are available at the store, and I'm just trying to figure out if I can justify the extra expense to get the Series 5. So those are some of the things. I'm just doing a lot of research in that, and some other software and other things I'm looking at getting. Just doing a lot of research and trying to figure out whether it's worth it or if I really need to get it. Because one thing I hate doing is spending money on something that turns out I don't really need. I know from some of the notices I've been getting via email, stuff that I bought at last year's Black Friday. There's a few of them that I got notice that they're going to be renewed soon, and I immediately went in and just canceled them because I wasn't really using them. I thought it would be something I'd be interested in, and it turns out that I never really used it, so why continue paying? So that's a little bit of what I've been up to. Now, before I mention this week's tip of the week, I want to talk about the Resourceful Designer community. We had our monthly video chat this past week. Several people were able to attend, and we had some great conversations. There was no specific topic this time around. Sometimes we've had a theme, so we would talk all around a certain topic. This time it was more open, and we just discussed a lot of different things about design. We talked about websites, talked about our experiences meeting clients and going to conferences, and there was all sorts of things we talked about. So these are always a lot of fun. It's one of the highlights of the month as far as the community goes, because it's a chance for us to see each other. It's all done over video, so we can see each other face to face. We really get to know each other, which makes it so much more important because then the rest of the month in the Slack group, we know who we're dealing with. We know the person. We put a face to them. So it makes it so much more personal when we're helping people, when they're asking for advice, or when you're asking for advice and somebody gives you an answer. You know who that person is. So everybody in the community is telling me how much value they're getting from it, and I think you would get just as much value. So if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, please head on over to resourcefuldesigner.com/community, where it has all the information as well as the join links. And now, no resource this week, but I do have a tip. After talking to a few people, I realized that many don't understand what a true backup is. Or maybe I should reword that. They don't understand what a proper backup strategy is. The whole point of backup is redundancy. Redundancy is king. The more you have, the better. And that means you should have as many backups as you can afford. At the very least, you should have 2 backups. That would be the absolute minimum, is 2. A physical backup at your location and another backup somewhere on the cloud. Now, these people I was talking to, one of them said, oh, I've got a backup. I've got an external drive that backs up everything on my computer. But they had nothing externally. They had nothing in the cloud. They didn't believe in cloud stuff and that. And I said, well, what happens if your house burns down or if somebody goes in and steals your computer and the backup drive? You lose everything. And they kind of went, yeah, that's true, but they didn't want to hear any more of it. The other person I talked to didn't have a physical drive. They were backing everything up to Dropbox. which is good. That's a better solution than the first person. But still, it's a single solution. What happens if, who knows, Dropbox declares bankruptcy or gets bought out and shut down by Google, or I don't know. But what happens if all of a sudden Dropbox is gone and that was your one option for backup? You can lose all your files. And that's why I say redundancy when it comes to backup is king. You need to have more than one. I personally have 2 physical backup drives. I have one 3 terabyte drive here that backs up my computer on a regular basis, as well as an older Apple Time Machine device here that also does backup. So I have 2 separate Time Machine. They're both hooked up through Time Machine on my iMac. I've got 2 separate ones here physically, as well as I have Backblaze hooked up to my system. So that's a 3rd backup in the cloud. So I have 3. Now, I'm relying that nothing will happen to all 3 of these at one point. If something happens to my computer, I know I've got a complete backup times 2 sitting right here on my desk. And if something happens to my office where everything is lost, I know that I have a complete backup of my system in the cloud via Backblaze. Now, another point I want to bring across here is the difference between backup and storage. Those are 2 different things. There's a lot of people that I talk to that say that, I have backup, it's in Dropbox. But what they're talking about is they move files off their computer to Dropbox. Or they think they put all their files on Dropbox. That way they're on their computer and they're in Dropbox. That is not the same thing. That is still just one service. Yes, they're on your computer, but if something happens to your computer, yes, they're on Dropbox, but you need something more than that. That is a great storage option. If you need room, move files off your computer and put them on Dropbox, but make sure you have some sort of other strategy in place to protect yourself. I've mentioned Backblaze a few times. That's the one I swear by. For $60 a year, it backs everything up. You set it up and then you never have to worry about it again, or hopefully you never have to worry about it again. But if you do ever need something, it's there for you. Now, if you're interested in Backblaze, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/Backblaze and sign up there. Now, I don't know if they're going to be having a Black Friday sale, but if you want to hold off just another couple of weeks at the time that this episode comes out, we're only a couple of weeks away from Black Friday, you might want to hold off and then use that link, resourcefuldesigner.com/Backblaze, and see what sort of deal they're offering. So all of this to say that whenever you think of your backups, make sure you have redundancies in place. You should have at least one physical backup, which is a duplicate of your current hard drive. You should have another one here in your office or there in your home or whatever. And then you should have something in the cloud. Only then are your files truly safe. And now, design business networking. To some people, networking comes naturally. Put them in a crowd and you just watch them work their magic. It's amazing. But to other people, the thought of walking up to a complete stranger and starting a conversation just fills them with dread. I know. I was that guy. Growing up, I was as introverted as they get. Unless I was with my very small group of friends, I preferred to be by myself. I was quiet, I was shy, and I tended to avoid eye contact with anybody I talked to, especially those of the opposite sex. Needless to say, I was not one of the most popular kids at school. But then, in high school, I got a job working at Sears, and I met my friend Mike. Now, Mike and I worked together at Sears throughout all of high school and college. Now, we didn't work in the same department at Sears, but since we were the same age and we had the same breaks and lunch times, we ended up hanging out together. Now, Mike is the complete opposite of what I am. Where back then I was quiet and I liked to keep to myself, Mike was loud, he was outgoing, and he treated everybody he met as if they were great long-lost friends. It didn't matter if he was just meeting them for the first time. He treated them like they were old friends. And that was a little bit hard for me to get used to. But Mike set out a goal from day one. From the day he met me and we started hanging out together, he set out a goal to get me out of my shell. And he eventually did, to an extent. I'm by no means as extroverted as Mike is. I still prefer to be by myself than spend time in large crowds. I love working all by myself here at home. I'm somebody who's never bored. I can always think of something to do or something to keep me occupied. I like the isolation. But I am much more outgoing now than I was as a teenager. I no longer have a problem striking up a conversation while in the checkout line at Walmart or the grocery store, or asking a perfect stranger for advice at a store. If I'm checking out 2 shirts or 2 pairs of shoes and asking somebody, what do you think of these? I have no problem doing that sort of thing now. But if you stick me in a large gathering of people and just push me and say, okay, go network, I still feel that apprehension creep back in because it's unnatural to me. And therein lies the problem with most designers, because face it, most designers, I don't know if you are or not, but most designers are introverts. And in order to grow your design business, you need to get out there. You need to talk about what you do. You need to let people know about your business. You can't just sit at your desk all day and hope that the phone will ring and work will come in. You can't keep your fingers crossed and hope that your SEO efforts pay off and clients start arriving in droves. It just doesn't work that way, or at least it doesn't for most designers. If you want your business to grow, you need to get out there. You need to meet new people, and you need to talk to them and let them know what you do. So how do you get over the apprehension of networking? Well, I'll tell you what I did. I stopped thinking of networking as, well, networking. Instead, I try to think of it as relationship building. I don't attend gatherings with a purpose of getting new clients or growing my business. Now, don't get me wrong. That is the desired outcome. I'd be foolish to tell you otherwise. Because if you're not there to grow your business and get new clients, why bother doing it at all? But when I go, I don't mentally set that as a goal. Instead, the goal that I set in my mind is to build relationships with people. I'm not there to win them over or to sell them. I'm there to get to know them. And that makes it much easier for me to interact with perfect strangers. It removes that burden of being a salesperson. Instead, I can present myself as an interested bystander and get to know them. And you know what? Landing new clients is often a byproduct of building those relationships, not the other way around. I've talked many times before on this podcast about the importance of building relationships with your clients. Episode 20 was dedicated specifically to that one topic. And yes, you should be trying to build relationships with every client you have. That's how you build client loyalty. You get them coming back. You get them to appreciate what it is you do. But relationship building isn't exclusive to existing clients. In fact, relationship building can actually be a strong precursor for someone to eventually become a client. I've mentioned before on the show how I do work for a media agency. Whenever they need artwork done for one of their clients, I'm the person that does it. Well, I got that gig because I had built a relationship with the owner of that agency. I got to know him. We became kind of friends over time. And because of that relationship, when it came time for him to find a designer that could handle the needs of his clients, I was the first person he thought of. But how does that help you in networking events? Honestly, it doesn't. But what it does show you is that the power of relationship building works. So what if you are an introvert and the thought of networking or relationship building, if you want to call it that, still terrifies you? I want to share a few tips that may help you out. First off, start with people you know. It's a lot easier to have a conversation with somebody you're already familiar with. Now, I'm not talking about your parents or your siblings or stuff like that, but maybe have a conversation with your doctor or dentist or the mechanic who services your car or your landlord or the friends of, if you have children, maybe the parents of your children's friends, old schoolmates that you run into, anybody that you're already familiar with. It's much easier to start a conversation with them than it is a perfect stranger. And then when you have that conversation going, the trick is to weave in little mentions and tidbits about what it is you do. You're not trying to sell them. You're just trying to build a relationship so you get to know them and they need to get to know you. So make sure you let them know what you do. Now, the second tip I can offer you is find small gatherings. You don't need to attend huge conferences to be successful. Start building relationships at small gatherings. If you do have kids, try talking to the other parents at school gatherings. If you don't have kids, look in your local area. There are plenty of events in every municipality where you can meet people. Look on websites or blogs for the area. Check out Facebook for what events are happening near you. Or try meetup.com. There are plenty of resources for different meetups or groups or events that are holding things that you can go to and talk to people. See if there's a WordCamp near you. That's a great place to meet people, and you'll probably learn a lot of stuff that is useful to your design business while you're there. Now, another tip is to make sure whenever you're conversing with somebody to listen and ask questions. See, the best part of building relationships as opposed to networking is instead of trying to sell yourself like you would in networking, when you're building relationships, you're trying to get to know the people you're talking to. Ask them questions about where they work and what they do, and be sure you listen. And then follow up with more questions depending on how the conversation goes, whatever answers they give you. Continue that conversation. The more you get to know about somebody, the better. And the more you listen, the more they appreciate you. But be sure that as you're conversing with them, you do mention what you do. You don't have to go into a lot of details. Just make sure they're aware that you are a designer and what services you offer. And sometimes that could be accomplished simply by replying to one of their answers. They may say something and you can say, oh, I had a similar experience with one of my design clients, and then just go into minor details about it, and then go back to asking them questions. Now, once you do build up the confidence to go to some events, whether they're local or far away or whatever, small or large, if you're still not sure about the whole networking thing, maybe you want to set yourself a quote-unquote people quota. What I mean by this is before attending an event, set a goal for yourself that you're going to meet a certain number of people. Tell yourself, I'm going to this event and I want to meet 3 new people today. Or maybe you're ambitious and you're going to say, I'm going to meet a dozen new people today. Whatever number, set a number, go there and make yourself talk to that many people. And once you've accomplished that, then your goal is met. You've done what you set out to achieve, and now it's up to you. You can keep walking around, talking to people, enjoying the event, or if you want to leave, leave. You have permission. You've reached your goal. Now, of course, all of this builds up to attending large conferences, and large conferences are the best places to network. Now, if you're going to attend a large conference, especially something that you're going away, if it's not in your immediate area, if you're going away somewhere, the best thing you can do is join in on the community. See if the conference has a Facebook group or something similar. Many of them do. Maybe it's a LinkedIn group. Who knows? But join the group and then get involved with others that are in the group. Comment on their posts. Ask questions of your own. And don't forget to follow the conference hashtags. Most conferences have their own social media presence and will develop a hashtag to follow along with the conference. So make sure you follow the hashtags on Twitter, on Instagram, or wherever you follow hashtags. And make sure you use the hashtags yourself whenever you're talking about your excitement to attend the conference or stuff you want to see or people you want to meet, and that use that hashtag. And then take note of other people who are also excited about attending the conference and ask them if they would like to meet up once there. That's a great way to break the ice. Have a conversation on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram with somebody and then say, you're attending the conference? Why don't we meet up for a coffee or something? And then it'll make it so much easier to talk to them when you finally arrive at the conference. And you'll have one person at least that you know you're going to meet and talk with. And that might be enough to get the ball rolling and get you talking to other people. And keep in mind when you do attend these big conferences that the best thing about them is the people that you will meet. These conferences go a long way in getting some big name people to give lots of talks and panels and all sorts of stuff. But let me tell you, after attending several conferences, given the choice, I will always skip whatever session is going on in order to keep a great conversation going with somebody that I just met. That's the true value of these conferences, is the people you meet, the conversations you have, and the relationships that you build. It's all about that. And it's not going to happen overnight. Sometimes it requires meeting some people several times. The last conference I went to, I picked up several clients, but they were all people that I had talked to in years past when I was going to these conferences. So we had built up a relationship. I didn't know them very well, but I knew them well enough to say hi to them, to start a conversation with them, to catch up with them on what's happened in their lives in the past few years. And me knowing them and them knowing me, next thing you know, they're asking me for my services. And that's why I say relationship building is so important. If you go in there as a salesperson and you're just pitching yourself, it's going to be very hard to come out of there with new clients. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's very hard. But if you go in there to build relationships, then those people will trust you, and people are much more willing to do work with people they trust. Now, I know all of this can be very difficult, especially if you are an introvert. But if you want to grow your design business, you need to get out there and talk about it. Let people know that you're there. Let people know what services you offer. And just like everything else in life, if you take it one step at a time, you'll manage. You'll get through. You may never become fully comfortable having a conversation with a stranger. I do it on a regular basis, and I can tell you that I'm still not comfortable with it, but it's something I've got used to doing. And hopefully, like what happened to me, that feeling of apprehension will diminish over time, allowing you to give it your best effort. So go have a look in your local area. Do a search online, check Facebook or meetup.com. Choose an event that's coming up to attend. There's no time like the present to get started. So that's what I wanted to talk about this week. Now, next week, I'm going to actually continue this topic. Today, I was talking about attending conferences and meeting people, but that's not the only way to network with somebody. So next week, I'm going to do kind of a part 2 to this, where I'm going to share advice on ways to network that don't involve face-to-face meetings. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't get out there, that you should only rely on these other methods. I really encourage you to go out there, meet people face-to-face. It's the best way, the easiest way to build relationships. But it isn't the only way. So next week, I'm going to share that side of it. Now, I would love to know what your experience with networking is. Have you found it successful? Do you agree that it is a great way to grow your business? Let me know by leaving a comment for this episode at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 191. Now, I'm going to be putting the questions of the week on hold for the next several weeks. My schedule is going to get a little bit busier for the rest of 2019, so I'm just going to let whatever questions accumulate. And the other reason is I don't have a lot of questions, so I would run out very quick again. So I'm just going to let them accumulate, and then starting in January, I'm going to reintroduce the question of the week. But in the meantime, I would love for you to submit a question for the podcast. Please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and fill out the form there, submitting your question, and I'll make sure to answer it in the new year. So that's it for this episode. Just a friendly reminder, if you are interested in checking out the Resourceful Designer community, now's a perfect time to join. Visit resourcefuldesigner.com/community to learn more. So thank you very much for tuning in. I always appreciate you sticking around till the end here, listening to everything I have to say. But now it's time to get back to work. So until next time, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your design business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.